All right. Welcome, Johnny Joy, to CHOW.
Well, thank you. And in the background is our nighttime routine here. I have a 1-year-old at the ripe age of 41. Decided it was about time to start having some kids. I also have 2 very loud dogs, so you're going to hear bath time begin and dogs barking. That's just part of the deal. But yeah, my name is Johnny. I assume, are we all currently restaurant workers or formerly service workers? Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I actually made it out of F&B by, alcoholism and the grace of God. I made it out of food and beverage because an opportunity fell into my lap, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit. But to give you some background on me, I am from here, as you can see by the flag above my head. I am a very, very proud Colorado native, a 4th generation. I live down here in Colorado Springs. I've been here my entire life. I've lived up in Fort Collins, Boulder, Longmont, and then all the different suburbs of Denver for the most part. Besides Castle Rock, I've lived up and down the entirety of the Front Range, working in restaurants all along the way. I've been in restaurants since I was 15 years old. Like I said, now 41, and got out not long ago. And I remember my first job. I thought it was very illustrious because when I got it, I had the term assistant, and I was like, assistant? All right. As you all know, and I'll see the smiles here shortly, assistant dishwasher is the lowest rung. There's nothing beyond, there's nothing lower than the assistant dishwasher position. And yeah, so that's how my food and beverage journey started. Now, growing up, fairly normal childhood, nothing major. I mean, besides the normal stuff that we all kind of go through. Father abandoned us, mom raised us on her own, 2 kids, no child support, same deal. But my mom worked her butt off, and she's still alive today, lives here in the city of Colorado Springs. But I fell in love with food and beverage immediately. I quickly surpassed my dishwashing Jedi, and made my way up to prep cook and then line cook, and then before I knew it, that's when I was hooked. I got out onto the floor, and I really still like being in the heart of the house, in the back of the house, but I've done every position there is to do in restaurants. I could go through the list of restaurants I've worked in. Some are closed, some are still operational. My longest stint, and where addiction found me, is Old Chicago. And I'm sure there's still plenty of Old Chicagos in the Colorado area. If you're not in Colorado, it's a pizza and beer joint. Now, at Old Chicago, I was at the one, if you're familiar with Superior, Louisville, Boulder area, there was the one right there on 36, just off to the left-hand side as you're headed into Boulder. I was a broke non-college student. I went and got my associates in Fort Collins in art history, and didn't really go much past that. And I moved down to Boulder for a summer, which ended up lasting 6 years. And so I knew I needed to find a job, and they had just opened that Old Chicago over on Louisville Superior. So I went there, and all they were hiring for was dishwashers. And so again, I started off as a dishwasher and quickly moved up to busser, and from busser moved to, I was became a server, then cocktailer, then bartender, then bar manager, then supervisor, and then AGM, and then AKM, and all the positions. But it was during that time, I was probably about 24 at that time, and I was living down in I guess that'd be Westminster at the time, working at Old Chicago. And my friend and I decided to go grab some beers over at Rock Bottom, over on 104th. And I was there, and my phone rang, and this was 2001. So cell phones, yeah, we still had cell phones, not very good ones, but we still had them. And in 2001, my phone rings, and I'm sitting there at Rock Bottom, and it's my aunt calling, and she says, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm just in Westminster." She's calling from the Springs. I said, "What's up?" She says, "You need to get down here." And I said, "What's going on?" She's like, "You need to get down here." And I said, what's going on? She said, it's Julie, my sister. And I said, okay, what happened to Julie? She said, you just need to get down here. I said, is she alive? You need to get down here. And so I don't remember the drive. I remember I just hopped in my car and was told to go to Penrose Hospital, Maine, which is in the heart of downtown. And I got there and I rushed into the ICU, and there's my sister. She was 4 years older than me at the time. Master's degree teacher, hooked up to every machine you could possibly imagine with hoses and tubes. And all I saw was a gray body. She had dealt with a lot of issues of abandonment from my father. My father walked out on us when I was about 9, but she was 14. So you walk out on a 14-year-old girl, that's gonna mess with the goo between your ears. I can see Taryn nodding. Yeah, I mean, we've all been there one way or another, and especially to a young girl. She was engaged to 5 different guys, 5 different times, and she was 28 at the time. And she had stolen a what's called a Duragesic patch, or fentanyl, and it's a transdermal patch. One of her coworkers was a cancer patient, and these are for cancer, AIDS patients, people that can't ingest painkillers due to the nausea. My sister was maybe 100 pounds, 5'3", very, very small gal, and she had a fentanyl patch on each thigh, and a little bit of alcohol in her system. She passed out on her back and threw up, and they think was without oxygen for about 45 minutes. So for 4 days, we sat there at the hospital, because growing up, it was always just me, my mom, and my sister. And we had to, on August 14th, 2000, it was actually 2002, we had to make that decision. And we took her off life support because, I mean, we looked at every viable option and realized that this is not, it wasn't a life worth living, you know? So yeah, I lost my only sibling and one of my best friends. And on we went. It didn't really hit me until about 6 months later, I would say, because I was so busy taking care of my mom. And I remember I woke up one morning and it was just like a sledgehammer to the side of the head, just being like, oh my God. And this wave of grief, and this wave of pain and this wave of emptiness just started to wash over me. Luckily, that's when I started to realize that there was something that could kind of fill that back up. I mean, I was a bartender. I drank, I partied, I did blow and smoked herb and all the fun things you do when you're in Boulder, but nothing really to excess, because I wasn't trying to cover up an emotional wound. And it wasn't one of those things where it happened like that, where it just took off immediately. This is all in hindsight. You can't connect the dots looking forward. Only backwards can I say, there it is. 9 months later, almost to the day, I was back at rock bottom, the restaurant, and my phone rings again. This time it's my mom. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, where are you? I said, I'm in Westminster at rock bottom. Why? She's like, you need to get to Lutheran Medical. I'm like, why? She's like, it's your cousin. I said, is she alive? You need to get to Lutheran Medical. And I rush in, exact same scenario, not fentanyl, but prescription pills. Accidental overdose led to an asthma attack without oxygen, 45 minutes. And there she was, 32 years old, master's degree in microbiology engineering, smart gal, but a lot of pain. And 4 days later, had to disconnect life support, and she was gone. So now the 2 people I grew up with are now gone in 9 months, both due to drugs. So you would think that, hi, baby, my daughter's saying hi. You would think that would make me say, well, I'm going to steer clear, but I think we all can agree that we don't have common sense. We see our lives collapsing around us, so we figure the best way to take care of that is to follow in suit, just as long as we're not feeling any pain. During all this time, I decided it was probably a good idea to try and make amends with my father. I was 25 at the time. My father had he abandoned us. We lived in the same city for a number of years. And I didn't see or talk to him for about 8 years. We'd pass at the grocery store, pass in traffic, nothing. He got remarried. He got 2 new kids. And I said, I need to make some amends with this man. And I kept trying because he was there when my sister passed. I called him, it was only right. It was his flesh and blood. You know, even though they weren't close, he deserved to see his daughter. And um, I never got to ask him the question of why. Why did you leave? What did I do? Why would you not value your relationship with your children? But on September 5th, 2005, I get a voicemail from my stepmom saying, "Hey, Johnny, I thought you should know your father died this morning." Yeah, okay. Okay. And that's, looking back now, that's when it all cracked open. That's when I just opened up the floodgates and said, fuck it. Pardon my language, but fuck it. Just let it in. You know, it's just time. But I was still very active in the restaurant business. I was the most successful bar manager in old Chicago history. You know, I just opened the brand new store down here in Colorado Springs on Powers Boulevard. You know, we had the lowest liquor cost and the highest sales. We were the cat's meow here in town. We were the place to be. You know, but behind the scenes, you know, I kept my composure at work, but behind the scenes, I was a mess. It just got worse and it got worse and it got worse, you know, to the point where, you know, as I'm sure we all know, like, you know, you start where it goes like, well, I guess I'll just have a beer with lunch. Well, I guess I'll just have one drink for breakfast, you know, and then if you don't have that drink for breakfast, you start getting a little shaky, and then that gets even more shaky, to the point where I was beginning to be able to just level myself off, for the most part. And some things happened with old Chicago after 9 years. I finally decided to leave because I got an offer from a guy that owned an Irish pub here in town. And he, privately owned, decided I should go work for this Irish pub. So you got a guy with massive trauma and quite a thirst for liquor going to work at an Irish pub. What could possibly go wrong here? You know, I hadn't dealt with anything that was going on between my ears. That was the problem, though. You know, so I went down there, and things got real messy real fast. You know, I ended up getting fired from there after about 8 months, just because I was just hammered all the time. I was giving away his booze. I was giving away his profit. I was pissing off regulars, you know, and so then I thought to myself, okay, you know, I've got to get out of food and beverage for a little while. I have to, you know, maybe that's what I need, a little change of scenery. So I went and worked for a luxury hotel here in Colorado Springs. There's a couple of them. It wasn't the Broadmoor. It was called Cheyenne Mountain Resort. And I became the director of guest services there. But I carried with me this massive drinking problem. I always had a box of wine behind the seat in my truck. You know, I always had like a jar of pickles, because I thought somehow if you drink pickle juice, no one can tell. You know, I'm sweating booze. I'm just absolutely saturated. But I figured if I drink 8 bottles of wine a day, a dill pickle should really cover that up. No one the wiser. No one's going to catch on to this. Then I figured, well, you know, all the girls I was together with, and all the one night stands I'd had, and all the bad relationships that come with this industry, I figured it was probably time that I find a more professional lady. So I went and got myself married. And I married the gal that was in charge of memberships for the Country Club of Colorado, selling $30,000 memberships to play golf and pat each other on the back and congratulate themselves on being masters of the universe. And I thought I was something special. Well, I turned 30 years old, and as it turns out, unbeknownst to me, my grandmother had left. I was telling our friend Bill that old money through Colorado Springs, my second cousins used to own the Broadmoor Hotel. So there was a chunk of change that my grandmother had left. But now when my sister died, it all rolled over to me. And when I turned 30, suddenly I get $550,000. I get $500,000. And, you know, it's always funny because you go to meetings and people say, well, if I had more money, I wouldn't drink. And I'm like, you're so full of shit. You just drink better booze. I promise you. You know, you hop on a red eye to New York City when you got that kind of money. You know, I didn't have to work. And you know, the wife at the time, she certainly enjoyed that luxury as well. I bought a cool classic sports car, 1972 MGB Roadster with 40,000 miles. You know, I went and bought a 5-bedroom house for cash. I mean, it was great. I blew the other $200,000 in, I don't know, about a year and a half, just, you know, just having a good old time. So when the money ran out, suddenly my now ex-wife's attraction also ran out. It's the damnedest thing how that one worked, the timing. And she really wanted me to quit drinking because when there was the money, my drinking was pretty irritating. And I can't say I blame her. You know, I mean, I can say it was the in-laws. I can say it was this or that or the other, but I'm just as much to blame as anybody. So she so desperately wanted me to quit drinking that she hid my debit card from me. Now, I hadn't been very clear with her as to the amount of drinking that I was involved with. So when you cut somebody off cold turkey that's drinking 8 bottles of wine a day, the next natural thing that happens, a grand mal seizure took place, and I ended up in the same hospital that my sister died in. I was there for about 5 days. I don't remember any of it. And I woke up in Cedar Springs, which is a mental hospital down here in the Springs. That's where looks like Tarantino, Cedar Springs. Yeah, okay. That kind of jovial expression, you get it. And that's where I ended up. And I was there for 28 days. And they didn't do anything to help this. All they did was just feed me pills, you know, and I was more like a zombie. I was there with, you know, GIs with PTSD, and it was right across the street from a fire station. So you get a bunch of alcoholic GIs with PTSD, and then they hear fire alarms go off all day long. It was a real adventure. So I get out of that, and I hadn't taken care of my head at all. I stayed sober for about 2 weeks. I went off absolutely went off the rails. The ex-wife did nothing to try and, you know, hide the fact that she was keeping booze in the house for herself, you know, but she'd just go downstairs to guzzle her wine down, but I couldn't have any. And so I relapsed. And then this time I admitted myself to a place down in Pueblo called, what's the hospital down in Pueblo? Anyway, not important. Just the main hospital, Parkview. And I was 2 weeks into a 30-day program, and she came down to visit me for family night. And I was excited, you know, got the ex-wife down here to visit me for family night, and she had a manila folder in her hand. And what could possibly be inside that manila folder? Yes. It wasn't a congratulations letter, my acceptance to Harvard. It was divorce papers. And so I finished up my next 2 weeks, again, head scrambled. I get home, all the gaudy furniture was gone, which was fine. I hated it. It looked like a fake Better Homes and Gardens ad. And but then I go out to the garage, and gentlemen, you'll especially cringe at this one. My 1972 MGB Roadster was gone. Oh yeah, that one hurt. Regardless, I got it back, and desperately wanted to get sober, but it just got worse, and it got worse. I tried to get another job back at restaurants. I kept getting fired from restaurant after restaurant. Couldn't hold a job down to save my life until finally I had an incident where I woke up one morning. I still don't know what happened. I woke up one morning and I looked, and there's some blood on the pillow, and I'm like, huh, that's interesting. And there's a little bit of blood on the floor and a little bit on the wall, and I'm like, this is a curious way to wake up. And I followed this little trail of blood all the way out of my living room, where I had a giant horseshoe-shaped bar, because, you know, who wouldn't have a horseshoe-shaped bar in their living room? And my favorite Stein was broken all over the floor, and one of the bar stools was tipped over. And I mean, I went to bed alone. There was no one over at my house that I know of. And then I went and looked in the mirror. And I'm going to pull up this picture here, and I'll hold it up to the camera so y'all can see, maybe get an idea. My face was aching, and I couldn't really figure out why until I looked in the mirror, and then I thought, oh my God, this is my intake photo when I went to my first rehab. Let's see, there we go. That's not shadows. That's bruising. So yeah, I've got a plastic plate under this eye. I fractured my eye socket in 3 places, my cheek, my jaw. And I went to a place up in Denver, part of UC Health, called CeDAR. And CeDAR was absolutely amazing. I did 28 days there. I was going through a divorce, but they actually started working on the head. I thought that was great. You know, I'm getting things cleared up, you know, and this is going to be good. All the wounds started to heal. My eye didn't fall out of my head. That was good. I kept my vision, and I decided to move out to Newport Beach. There's a recovery place called Oceans, and I went out there for about 4 or 5 months. I was going to meetings, and like Robert Downey Jr. was at these meetings. Anthony Hopkins was at these meetings. Rob Lowe was at these meetings, you know. So when I was introduced to AA like that, I'm like, this is sexy. This is fun. This is all right. I mean, there's Iron Man, right on. And Anthony Hopkins would get there and be like, "Hi, I'm Tony." I'm like, "No, you're Hannibal. This is crazy." I'd ride my beach cruiser every day. We lived right on the beach. It was incredible. After about 4 months, though, it was time to come home, and I moved back to Colorado Springs. AA in the Springs isn't quite as sexy as as Rob Lowe and Anthony Hopkins in Newport Beach. I go to the one behind the McDonald's on Wasatch, and a guy is trying to eat his coin while pissing himself. I'm like, well, this sure is different. But I was sober, and I found some service work. I was the coffee guy. I worked for a coffee roaster. I was a buddy's dad. He owned a coffee roaster in Old Colorado City, and I brought in gourmet coffee and like half and half instead of the same shitty Folgers that sat on the burner for too long. I had the good stuff because I'm an addict. Of course, I want the good stuff, even when it comes to coffee. I stayed sober and I loved it. And I even met a girl there, and we started to date. And I made the fatal error of going and testing the waters. I thought I'd test the waters one more time because it was Memorial Day weekend, and we're going to say this is 2012. And I thought to myself, anyone else have a bad relapse or two? Yeah, probably. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I thought, you know what? I've been sober like 9 months now. I bet I can have a beer with my steak. That took about an hour and a half for me to get through the first three. We were like, I'll just split a 6-pack and I'll just have 3 beers and we'll be good to go. Before I knew it, I had to run to the grocery store because I forgot to pick up an onion, some shit, and slammed a bottle of wine in the parking lot. And then suddenly I was hiding booze all over the house again. And it got so bad so fast. I started getting so much anxiety from it that I went and saw a doctor and got prescribed Ativan. So I am at that point drinking 2 boxes of wine a day, which is equivalent to 8 bottles, a 12-pack of Bud Light Lime, and taking 2 milligrams of Ativan every single day. I was a sharp, savvy go-getter. That's what I was, meaning I just napped all the time. I don't remember much of anything. And I do remember, though, finding that girl's journal, and she was living with me. And I remember, I think she probably left it out for me to read because she couldn't have that conversation with me herself. And she left it out. And I remember just reading it, and it said, I can't be with this man anymore. I don't know who he is. He's not present. I must leave. And it was at that point, I was like, oh my God, like something just kind of clicked. And I remember I called my mom and I said, Mom, you've always been there for me. I'm going to die. Like, you're going to bury your other kid, unless I do something about this. I said, I've got to get medically detoxed first and foremost. And so I went up to a place up in Denver called West Pine, part of Lutheran. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Bill knows West Pine. And I remember I was laying in the hospital bed because they had to detox me there first to get my BAC under 0.35. When I got to Lutheran, I was at a 0.54. So, I go big or go home. And I was conscious. Like, the nurses kept looking, and they're like, "This isn't possible. You can't be 0.54." But I was, and then I remember laying there, and as loud as you and I are conversing right now, I heard a voice say to me, "It ends now. It's done. Not tomorrow, not in an hour, not a minute, not a second. It's done." And I said, okay. And I checked in, and 3 of the most physically and emotionally uncomfortable days of my entire life during that detox. I mean, their goal was to keep me from dying and having a seizure. I knew it was going to be uncomfortable, but the seconds were hours. It was brutal. I keep a note that I wrote to myself that says, if you ever feel like drinking again, just remember how bad you felt when you wrote this. And you can barely read it because, I mean, it was just, I was just shaking uncontrollably. It was as bad as it could possibly be. So I got out of there and instantly found meetings, and I found therapy. Hi, baby. Hi, sweet girl. I found therapy, and I found AA. And I just started to untangle the knot in my head, because that's where the problem was. Booze, the booze situation, that was out of my system. But what wasn't out of my system was the trauma, was all the stuff that made me have to keep covering up. Exactly. It was the tangled mess between my ears. And that's what I have not stopped working on that since March 14th, 2014. That has been my absolute goal. I'm a massive student of personal development. Right when I got out of detox and I still had the shakes and felt awful, one of my friends was involved with Herbalife, the multi-level marketing company. So I felt like losing a bunch of money and trying to, get people involved with shake mix. But the cool thing was, like, I looked at him and he was healthy and he was happy and he was helping people. And I was instantly attracted to the helping people part. I couldn't really get excited about mint chocolate chip shake mix, like, whatever, but I ended up opening a big Herbalife club where we gave free workouts to the community 4 days a week. I ended up meeting my wife 3 months after I got sober, actually, met her on Match. And I'll always remember that conversation we had when she's like, well, do you want to go grab a drink or something? I was like, it's time I tell you something. I said, I don't drink. She's like, well, I mean, I don't a lot. And I was like, no, like ever. Like, I don't do that anymore. And she's like, so if this continues, does that mean I get like a permanent DD? And I'm like, that's exactly what that means. And so sure enough, I went to the Bronco game yesterday and I drove everyone home. It was great. But I met my wife and things just got better and better and better because I was helping people. And, I'm a big advocate of the more you give, the more you have to be grateful for. And the more you're grateful, the more it just keeps coming back. And while I was helping people maybe lose a little weight and get involved with Herbalife, I started to realize I can actually help people get sober. People were starting to come to me and say, how'd you do it? And about 5 years ago, I went out to Las Vegas for this event called GoPro, and it was a network marketing event. The keynote speakers were Sir Richard Branson and Tony Robbins. But there was a guy, and he kind of sounded like me, but he was about 25 years my senior, and he said he was from Longmont, Colorado, and he was a millionaire now in multi-level marketing. And he goes, but I'm just old, washed up alcoholic. And he said this in front of 20,000 people. And I was like, did you just tell 20,000 strangers that you're an alcoholic and now you're successful? And it was like, bing. And it like something switched for me. I'm like, I don't have to be anonymous about this if I don't want to, because there's a lot of people that need help. And so I got so excited about just being able to help people. And so I started becoming like a massive student of personal development and just studying all these great thinkers and writers and motivators and business influencers. And we decided to do this event for my Herbalife club where we got the fire department. We were going to get people in for a disaster preparedness thing. And one of the gal that organized it said, hey, I sent out a press release and a local radio station just picked it up. They would like us to come in and be on air. And I was like, you go ahead. She's like, no, it's your club. You got to come in and be on the radio with me. I'm like, nah, I'm not a radio guy. I am not a radio guy at all. And she's like, just come in. And so I did the 5-minute little spiel on the radio. And when we were done, the owner of the station leans over and he says, you ever been on the radio? I was like, no, I haven't been on the radio. He goes, do you want to be on the radio? And I was like, well, yeah, but I don't have a broadcaster communications degree. I don't have any of that. He says, it's all right. He's like, give me a call tomorrow. And for 6 months, I went in every Monday morning and I did a 1-minute segment for 6 months every week called Motivation Moments with Johnny. Monday morning Motivation Moments with Johnny. And I would just give like a little motivational bleh, bleh. And then suddenly he gave me a Sunday show from 12 to 3. And I did that for about a year and a half. And that Sunday show then turned into a lunch show. And that lunch show about 2 years ago turned into me being the co-host of the morning routine on the #1 country station in Colorado Springs. And I've been vocal about my sobriety on the radio station. I've been vocal all over social media because, as I was talking about, there are so many of us out there that need help. And, especially in the restaurant business. Mine, I know I went off a little track because I'm not in the restaurant business anymore. But, being a member of the media, there is a lifestyle that goes with being a member of the media too that's very, very dark. And it's very lonely because you become a personality. People think they know who I am when they see me at the grocery store. When I say I'm Johnny from Mountain Country, they go, oh, yeah, I listen to you every morning and I know you and I know your daughter. And I'm like, no, you don't. so there's still that loneliness and that darkness that comes with it. And but as long as I keep taking care of what's in between my ears, and I keep studying the greats, and I keep going and being present at meetings and being present for other addicts and other alcoholics, and knowing that this thing is always on my shoulder, ready to pounce, um, uh, my life now is magic. Do I miss it? No. Do I miss the idea of it, the poetic idea? Yes, sure. I work for a country music station. I play songs about whiskey and trucks and beer all the time. I wish I could, like yesterday, go and like sit there with my wife and have a nice cold beer, with my arm around her on the tailgate of my truck. But you know what? My water is just fine because I live in a dream house we got to build from the ground up. I've got, our 2 dream cars in the garage. I've got a dream job. My wife is the most beautiful one I've ever seen. My daughter is the most incredible single creature this world has ever known. My group of friends, my tribe, would go to the ends of the earth for me, and I go to the ends of the earth for them. And every single day I wake up with just a sense of gratitude I'm sure a lot of you understand, or you might be fighting for, but it's right there. So when I talk to people and they say, is it not hard to be sober? I say, no, living like I was living, that was tough. Carrying around a jar of pickles thinking that was going to cover up 8 bottles of wine, trying to stop this from happening. That was tough. Watching relationships fall, watching my face get crushed, watching my bank account be in the pennies. That was tough. This is easy. This is wonderful. Every day I wake up in the morning and I go and we play George Strait and I goof off and I get paid incredibly well for it. It's unbelievable. And everything that's good in my life, every single thing, is a result of me doing this and putting that over here and continuing to live my life. Pretty simple, pretty darn simple. I was telling John, I could just keep going and going and going. But I'll open this up to any questions. I mean, that's the short, long version of kind of where I was, where I've been, where I am now. All of you too. All of you. You're all amazing. And thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me ramble on there.